completely downtrodden. They are down because they cannot explain why it seems that the people they voted into office appear to have disappeared from their duty posts and can't even explain to them what is going on in the area of insecurity, their economic well-being, the education of their children, opportunities that should abound in life, in land for employment and social welfare. They have nowhere to resort to when they are sick, except to be left to figure out how they can resort to self-help. When you find that government that is supposed to protect you is telling you to go protect yourself, then it feels like you've lost everything. You've lost everything. Never seen it this bad before in a very long time. I've been around for a while. So I've seen bad times and fairly good times, not very good times. I cannot say that in my 51-year existence as a citizen of Nigeria that I've never seen good time as I've seen or experienced in a place like America where I spent 20 years. But this is now precarious.
Precarious. I mean, a lot of Nigerians share your sentiments. But apparently we're still in denial as to the enormity, as to the gravity of the challenge confronting the nation. Will I be right pushing that line of argument that we're in denial?
I don't think it is denial as much as it is helplessness. You know, helplessness manifests in many ways. I have been in aircraft with people where we're hit by massive turbulence, and even the flight attendants were flying to sit down. And there are people who panicked and start praying, and I looked to my left and I saw some four guys, and they weren't panicked. And I said to them, just exactly the question you asked, are you in denial? And the answer, that was when we landed. The answer from one of them is like, what do you do? Even if the plane is going down, what can we really do than to just sit and wait for it to crash? And that's the way I look at this context that you're asking the question. I think for a lot of Nigerians, being outrightly or outwardly, not outrightly, in a state of denial is a coping mechanism. Those who panic are also using that as a coping mechanism. Those who are confused are also using it as a coping mechanism. And those who are hopeful are also using it as a coping mechanism. So people react differently. Different people react differently to the same circumstance. So to start saying that people are in denial is to say maybe those in government are in denial. It makes sense that they're in denial because they are the perpetrators of this. So to avoid guilt, and criminal liability in some cases, they have to be in denial. I'd say there's a popular song by, I think, a Jamaican guy was in the U.S. Army who used to say, it wasn't me. That's what it is. So I think people who are in government, it makes sense that they're in denial because, governance has been so terrible at this point. It has reached the level of criminal liability.
Now, I wanted to expatiate more about this criminal liability, but there's also this very serious concern in terms of the governance structure and the arrangement in this country. Apparently, it's driven. More and more, it's devoid of any principle. It's devoid of any ideological direction. You're one of the faces thrown up in the run-up to the 2023 general elections.
Yes.
You're standing in as the presidential candidate of the
African Action Congress.
African Action Congress.
Yes.
You are of leaning towards the left.
Yes.
Seemingly among the very few of the 18 candidates that have an ideological position.
Yes. That's correct.
Bring us into this.
Yes.
Of course, we know you have a leftist inclination.
Yeah. It's a leftist inclination, leftist tendencies. See, mine came through ideological training as well. You can have convictions and not be well trained in your conviction. You can have conviction and not be convinced about your convictions, and you can just be making a claim. But in my own case, I have been tried and tested, battle tested, for over 30 years. So when I see red, I know it is red, and I'll call it red. But beyond that, there has been physical training in ideological convictions.
I don't understand physical training.
Well, in that you can make a claim of being a leftist and never been through what leftists go through. You understand? So you can have an
Are you talking about, for instance, military drills?
Revolutionary. Our own version of military drills is that we go out there on the front lines to confront the oppressors, using our ideological badge to say we denounce this, and we get beaten up, we get thrown into jail, we get thrown before judges, and we still hold our fist in the air and say, this is where we stand. So it is not enough to just say, well, I carry the label, or wear a t-shirt, or wear a beret. Those are the easiest part of ideological makeups. But the real one is when you actually have to go through the drills. Yeah. And that I've been through a lot.
Yeah, through time, you've come at, let me use the word, in confrontation, at loggerheads with state and state actors.
Yes. Sometimes non-state actors.
For your ideological leaning.
Yes.
Okay. And there seem to be some, you remain persistent, consistent, and tenacious. What's the driving? What's driving you to take this position? Anti-establishment, maybe even anti-institution.
Yeah. So people go through experiences in life that first start them on a route or a journey. And mine was when I was 10 years old. My village came in contact with the kill and go police, the mobile police as is normally known now. And they ruined our village, beat up people because there was a minor disagreement between youths in the village on a market day and the police that led to some altercations that the police didn't like. And I was there, having been in primary school, having read about civics, and on my way to secondary school, and I said, well, I thought the government was supposed to protect us. Why are they brutalizing us? And right there, I started to look for ways and means of changing the way government relates with citizens. It wasn't until I got to the university and met the likes of Femi Falana, who were our ideological lecturers who come around breaking barriers, because in those days, and as it is now, even tactically, they don't allow them to address students. They are seen as people who are around to just cause confusion, commotion, They are seen as rebels against the existing order. And when I met with him, it was the period of the struggle against structural adjustments in our economic system, which eventually ruined the Nigerian economy. And there, I started to form into the ideologue that I eventually got the leftist and the resistor that I became against order and established authorities that are responsible for destroying our country and our rights, our environment, and all of that. So it didn't take long for me to really understand when I was in university that the journey wasn't a sprint. It was going to be a marathon. Because it was during my first expulsion that I knew, oh, this is the way government operates. And why? I was expelled at the University of Lagos. Before I got the letter of expulsion, even though I was in Lagos, they had taken it to my village, 300 miles away from Lagos in Ondo State. In those days, in 1989, this was 1992, if you sent a letter to my village, even if someone took it from me in Lagos, it took 2 days. But the system of oppression at that time under military rule took it to the village that night. As soon as the expulsion letter was ready, they drove down to my village to deliver it. So I said, wow, this is the efficiency of oppression. This is going to be a long battle. And the expulsion letter stated clearly that I was not only expelled from the University of Lagos, but any Nigerian university for that, or every.
How did you pull through? How?
So we went to court. In those days we had Femi Falana or Gani Falana, Melissa Agbakova, one Dr. Broderick's, his master or someone, and we would go to court. And while we were in court, we met the judiciary. We had a judge. I think his name is Abiodun Quesintin. He's late now, a long time. He told us outright, he said, there's the one who used to call Babangida Kabiesi. He said, do you expect me to rule against the government? You are wasting your time. He said, on Friday, if you guys are ready and remorseful, come, I will take you to the Vice Chancellor of University of Lagos at the Lagos Mosque. We'll go and beg. We'll beg him to pardon you people. But he was referring to Olusegun Mayegun at that time, who was an aspirant. You have to cut your hair. You look too rascally for the society, because he had dreadlocks. And he said, the rest of you, be ready. Wear nice clothes. And our lawyer told him, said, my lord, you are insulting us. You are insulting these young people. He said, I don't care. You should go and ask Gani Falana what I do to him all the time. So now I've met 2 institutions of oppression. The one that delivered, the university that expelled me and delivered the letter overnight to my village, and then the judiciary that is not willing to take the course of justice. So how did we end up? When they reopened the university, they closed down the university after the 1992 riots, known as Babangida Moscow, that forced Babangida to now hold elections in 1992 that eventually cancelled. So when they reopened the school, we mobilized ourselves, boycotted lectures, and by afternoon they had written a release claiming that they granted us amnesty. So that was how we pulled through.
Now, you through time you've been boxed in, pardon the choice of word.
Yeah, it's not a problem.
As a rebel, as a non-conformist. What is, even to some extent, a rascal.
Yeah.
What's your response to these labels?
Well, there is nobody who is resisting oppression in the world, in the history of resistance, that is not labeled something beneath their status. We wear it as a badge of honor. But I don't think I am a rascal. I know I'm not. I'm a very sound, reasonable citizen of Nigeria. But when it comes to oppression and repression, I can be very, very unruly, because it's my own way of rejecting it as I see it. So, and what is unruliness? I can walk into a press conference like I did in New York in 2012, where a minister was addressing Nigerians in New York about fuel subsidy, and disrupt it. That is what they call rascality. But I can also be very, very reasonable. I participate in activities, I speak at events, I teach at a university, actually 2 universities. I run a media company just like you. Rascals don't do that. So, rebellion, yes, I'm rebellious against oppression. Absolutely. Non-conformist, yes, I don't conform with cultures and authorities. I have no respect for human rights. But I'm not a non-conformist to the point that I'll walk here naked. So there are what I conform with and things I don't conform with. So but you look at it, look at Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was described as a terrorist by the US government and the UK government while he was fighting against apartheid. He was terrorizing apartheid. But they regarded that as terrorism of the state, because the apartheid state in those days was a legitimate state represented at the United Nations. They attend the UN General Assembly every year. I think at the point they were also on the Human Rights Council. At the point there was rotation of the headship of the UN, that the apartheid state was given the opportunity to be represented with a legitimate business. But to Mandela and majority blacks, that was unacceptable to them. And for the modern world, it was terrorism. He was, not until he became president was the visa ban on Mandela lifted in the US. So, like I said, I prefer to be a terrorist against an oppressive state than to be a milk citizen who accepts all kinds of rubbish.
Okay, well, this conversation actually is towards really dissecting the entire processes towards 2023, such that Nigeria can get it right and we have a nation that works for all of us.
Absolutely.
At the beginning, we talked about the deficit in ideology and principles in driving governance and development in the country. Do you see that changing in the times leading to 2023? I ask that advisedly. The ranks of those who are given towards principles, for instance, the left,
yes,
is diminishing in the country. Are they still relevant?
Yeah. So let's be careful about labels. Yes. And the reason I say so is that the Nigerian nation has seen enough of people who carry ideological labels all around, and they have been some of the worst when it comes to the nitty-gritty of governance and principles stance. June 12 era was a period that showed the underbelly of the so-called leftists in the country. A lot of them sold out. It wasn't even much money. Some of them chickened out just
for peanuts.
Some of them were just not courageous enough, even though they spoke the loudest. Look at what happened after June 12. Most of the leftists were recruited into the government. People like Ebenezer, Babatope, there was Oluo Nagoro. So many of the leftists fell into like people like Jonathan Zwigina, who was very philosophically sound, but it was just a label. You look at now, you have a Keyamo, Festus Keyamo in the government today, that is violating human rights. And he says nothing about it. He doesn't resign. He doesn't protest it. He's just there enjoying himself. So when you throw the labels around in front of Nigerians, they are bound to sometimes be suspicious. Like, forget all these left people, Jerry. Give them a little banana, they are gone. So, but it is also important to admit and accept that that rank has been heavily depleted, because why? They are targeted over time.
Targeted?
Yes. They're targeted for ruin and compromise. whichever one works first. Look at Chief Gani Fawemi, for instance. They tried to compromise him his entire life. He was a lawyer. They were trying to give him briefs, but he rejected. Then when he wouldn't accept, they started throwing him into prison. To the point that doctors who treated him for lung cancer were shocked that someone who has never taken a puff of cigarette in his life would have lung cancer. But what did they find out? Gani has been saying that there was a time he was taken to Gashua in a prison, and they came in and threw in some stuff in his cell that made him feel uncomfortable, and that's probably where the cancer came from. Because the state is mischievously and dangerously deep when it comes to carrying out this activity. So the leftists in the country have been targeted. But they realize that killing leftists is not something you get away with very quickly. They keep delegating attitude, the people are still asking questions. But so they've gone the route of mostly applying compromise. And there's several ways you can compromise people in this country today, especially where hunger is very prevalent. So to be able to hold on to your ideological convictions, you must also have a means of survival and livelihood. If you don't, then your left leaning will become a mirage. That is why there's a saying that if you look to the left, there's nobody left. And if you look to the right, there's nobody doing what is right anymore. It's a mixture and cocktail of, hustlers all over the place.
Well, this country will not want to throw up hustlers to drive the reign of governance in 2023.
That is why we're here. That's why people like me have decided to
come out. Engage these issues. How can we keep hustlers out of the offices that matter in Nigeria come 2023? We'll be right back to continue this conversation.
Democracy in practice. Democracy in practice.
You're welcome back. Democracy in Practice, reaching you live from the studios of Liberty TV, driving from Abuja, on the combined service of Liberty Television and Liberty Radio. And I have in the studio with me Mr. Sowore Omoyele.
Yes.
He is of the African Action Congress. He's one of the 18.
We're not up to 18, by the way.
Yeah, 18 political parties actually.
I think about two of the political parties did not produce a presidential candidate.
Well, he's one of those aiming to lead Nigeria in 2023 as president. Now, before we went on the break, we were talking about what design can Nigeria come up with to set aside hustlers getting into office in 2023.
Yes.
Can we So far, in all the arrangements from the institutions and election institutions, the major players, political parties, and their candidates, are we acquitting ourselves in such a way that we can engage the issues decently, logically, to deliver on the expectations of good governance in 2023? Are we doing that? For instance, are you doing that as one of the...
Well, I'm doing my very best, and I know a lot of our colleagues have expectations and they are pushing as well, using whatever means is available to them. But I beg to just divert a little bit, digress. I would be sitting here lying to you if I tell you that the existing political party structures or political system in general can produce credible candidates to lead the country. It is the reason why after participating in 2019 election, I called for a revolution, because I saw it firsthand, having participated at that time in 78 political parties.
Yeah, I'll also come to that. You've been at this, you've been
not my first
before.
time.
This is not your first time.
Yes.
You had even called for a revolution, but we'll come to that.
So anything short of a revolution will not cleanse the audience table that the Nigerian political system has.
What should the scope of this, what is the character, the color of this revolution?
Well, do you see, revolutions happen as a result of social political consciousness, and it can happen anywhere. It can happen by the force of arms, but I don't believe in that, because then who is going to be left to benefit from it when we kill ourselves? But it can also happen from, mental consciousness, and that's what we are going through now, such that an electoral process like this can produce a candidate that's never been compromised before, myself, and who will be willing to look our oppressors in the eyes and say to them, enough is enough, time up, and that this country deserves to go in a different direction from what it has always been. And that leader, and many countries have had this type of leaders before, we then produce a human resources department that recruits good people into positions of power and authority, regulate them, make sure that they deliver on the promise of the leader or the manifesto of the party, and from there the country will be cleansed of the evil of hustlers. Well, as it is, you look at a simple issue that's ravaging even most of the major party candidates. None of them, the two political parties, can produce any evidence that they attended school. Something as simple as a testimonial, which all of us used to carry around in our back pocket, or portmanteaus as we used to call them. They can't produce. They can't produce. Some of them don't know their age. They say to you outrightly that their results are burnt down under certain circumstances. Some of them cannot tell you what their names were in primary school and secondary school and compare that to what their names now are now. Some of them are telling you that they did not know where they went to secondary school.
Are these tangible issues that
they are real, because
that should drive our
that's easy, but you cannot drive conscious politics without conscious people, without honest people. They are doing this deliberately to tell you that, look, this is our time. This is the era of the Yahoo men and boys, and they've taken over every space. And they just don't do that alone. Elements like this will destroy your education, because they know that an educated and enlightened populace is difficult to be governed by idiots. They will destroy your infrastructure and move out of the country whenever they want to enjoy life, because they know if they create a society where you can enjoy, you will not respect them. And they demand and extract maximum respect from the citizens, because that is what keeps them going. First and foremost, they have no self-esteem because they didn't grow up with it, and they don't want anybody to have it. They grew up without wealth, but they take too much of it so that others will be deprived of it. So these things are very substantial. So there's a lot of things we've overlooked over these years that have become now a big problem for us. The people you call terrorists today, started somewhere years ago. It could be, they might have started at an Okada park, where they start obtaining things from people, beating up their colleagues before they became big time. They've been practicing their trade before they graduated to. The people you call bandits today, they didn't start by stealing cows. They started by stealing yam. And then they graduated to cattle rustlers. The people you call kidnappers today started by doing little harassment and bullying, maybe in secondary school, and then they are now graduated into, well, they were cultists. But look at where we are now. The country is held by the jugular, by so many of the things we've ignored. The little lies that were told to us, even in our history books that we didn't challenge.
It's now busting in our faces.
It's now in your face. So this is why I say all of these issues are substantial. And that is why we must have a revolutionary mindset to solve the problem. And when I become the president, you have no doubt that I will stop people who steal, because that's what I've also learned to do. And I've never stolen before, even when the opportunity presented itself to do something shady, never did, because I've never found it to be virtuous to deprive people of their belongings. So, but look at our leaders. The worst amongst them are people who have done bad things in the past that we ignored. And now, they are now sitting on the neck of society. They're sitting on your shoulders. You can't move. It is because we've ignored this over time. And part of the job of a politician like myself, I hate to use the word politician, but you can use the word political activist like myself. It's not just to contest for election, but to use the electionary process and period to educate the masses, to educate people that, look, if you do go this route, you are likely to come out of the other side of it a better person, and your society will be better for it. But you know, it's a lot of work. Reason is that it is not only the political process that has been hijacked by these morons that we're talking about. They've hijacked the media. They've hijacked your educational institutions. They've hijacked your hospitals. They've hijacked your roads. They've hijacked employment. When was the last time you knew anybody who got employed into a federal institution without knowing somebody else? Maybe out of 100%, they'll take like 2% of, just out of little tolerance. So how do people then progress in your society when after you go through all this misery of going to school, you graduate even with a first class, and you can't get a job except you know somebody, and the person who cheated out throughout his educational career is the one who is the MD of the government institution or the MD of a bank because of who they know. So when you keep ignoring these things and you let them become so serious that they are confronting you everywhere, you will now understand why you drive on the highway and you don't make it to your destination. Either in the hands of the road constructor or kidnappers or bandits, because it is possible, and this is not a lie, to drive from here to Kaduna and have an accident, and when you leave the accident scene to be kidnapped, and while you are still waiting the kidnappers, then bandits can also raid the kidnappers and take over somebody who is a victim of kidnapping. Those three things can happen to you.
Terrifying scenario.
But it's so bad and terrible now that as of today, this morning, Afghanistan that all of us used to read and cringe is more stable than your country, Nigeria. It's probably more safe and more secure than Nigeria, because as of this morning, if we do the head count, probably some 20 people have been kidnapped across the country, and that would be just being, mild in terms of statistics. Probably some 50 people have been killed by bandits, kidnappers, terrorists, police, because the security agencies have also become a terrorist organization because of the way this country is governed. Some 100 people have died in the hands of incompetent doctors as of today, or about to die because of misdiagnosis or wrong treatment or lack of treatment. right? Some, probably 50 people have died of hunger. It might sound like unbelievable, but a lot of people go to bed in this country without food. Just a piece of grain to put in their mouth is not available because there's simply no money to purchase anything. And those who used to be able to go to their farms in the rural areas can't go anymore because the farms are not secure, just as the villages and towns and cities are not secure. So you are trapped between the devil and the very deep blue sea in a country called Nigeria. And this is a time that in places where our brains work or people's brain work, this is actually, ironically, the best time for change.
Do you see?
I'm not talking about the 419 change.
Do you see Nigerians seeing what is playing out in the country? Of course, nobody wants it to the path. Though. Do you see Nigerians using this moment as a wake-up call? That's at one level. At another level, I would say, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. You, as an individual, who've known you to be, well, for want of a better word, a whistleblower. You called attention to a lot of shortcomings exposed through the platforms that. But there have also been allegations that you use some unsavory, perhaps even unethical methods in the pursuit of the cause that you set for yourself. I want us to be able to balance both. Are Nigerians seeing this situation as a wake-up call to get things right and get the institutions working? And at a personal, individual level, what's your response to questions being raised about your methods?
Well,
for instance, I know that you're associated with... Yes, you are associated with Sahara Reporters.
Yeah, I founded Sahara Reporters.
Yes, and a couple of times Sahara Reporters has been alleged of using unwholesome, perhaps unethical methods in the pursuit of what it does.
Well, let me answer the first question about wake-up call. Any people are responding to. It's a little bit deeper philosophically for me to answer that people are, if they're getting a wake-up call. Because if you have to wake up, you must have been given the privilege to sleep. And a lot of people can't just go to sleep anymore in this country. So the question of waking them up then becomes redundant. Regarding the question of unethical methods, we're not specific, but I understand in general what people have accused Sahara Reporters of doing. Sometimes they say, you go get documents that should have been in your possession. My answer is very simple. If those in government are governing unethically, those who want to resist them are also at liberty to stop them unethically. So it's a question of balance of ethical terror.
Yeah, balance of terror.
Yes. So, and because if you started with managing public resources and you steal it, it's unethical. It's even criminal. If I can lay my hands to prove to the world that you stole,
even if you have to steal,
even if I have to steal the documents to show it, I'll do it. But I've never stolen a document before. But I have, in the course of my investigative work, gone out of the way to look for documents to prove my worth or to prove the truthfulness of my reporting. And sometimes they may not have come through Freedom of Information Act because the unethical people in government will also not honor the Freedom of Information requests. So, like Malcolm X said, sometimes it's by any means necessary. This is about liberty and freedom of a majority of our people. If 1% of our population are holding us to ransom, we have a right to free ourselves, whatever means is required to do that. So that's my answer to that. But they haven't been able to prove any of these things. They've taken me to court several times, both at home and abroad. In fact, judges in the U.S. have made pronouncements to validate the methodology you're questioning and said, this guy did what is right by reporting what they reported.
Infractions.
Yes. I remember a lawyer took me to court and we fought for 4 years. And while we were approaching the end of the case, this lawyer sold Nigerian government properties and pocketed some of the proceeds, and we reported on it. And while we were at it, a sister of his, he needed to prove malice, that we were targeting him because we personally hated him and started reporting. So he brought out a letter that his sister wrote and we published in the course of the case to show that it was malice, because the sister wrote there that he's a bad person. And when the judge was to rule on that particular very technical letter, which was where he eventually rested his argument, the judge said it would have been wrong for the sister to know he's a bad person and not tell the public. It would have been wrong for a media company to lay hand on a document that shows and not publish. And that was the end of the case. We won. So I'm just giving you an example of several of these. We've been challenged in several ways, both ethically, morally, and legally, to prove why we do what we do, and we have been able to scale through, even in their own courts in Nigeria, where, of course, they frequently take me. I've won cases severally against the government. Some of the cases are stalled, like the terrorism case they filed against me after I was detained for 5 months. It's been stalled. They have it before a judge. The judge wouldn't even give us a date. It's been 3 months now or more. I think at the beginning of this year. It's passed through like 3 judges. It's on the 3rd judge now. The man wouldn't want to just touch the case because there's no proof.
I was trying to sidetrack the terrorism charge.
Yes.
Because it's still before the court.
No, it's fine. We're having a public conversation. Actually, it's not before any court at this point.
Is that it?
The case has not been restarted, so we can talk about it. But even while it was active,
but there's a terrorism charge,
treasonable
felony,
yes,
against you.
There
how is it panning out at the moment?
It's been sent to another judge. The judge has not restarted the case. So, but there are several other cases, as you know, against both criminal and civil.
Are you comfortable with this barrage of cases, criminal and civil?
It's not. It wasn't. It wasn't my intention to get involved with being sued by as many people, authorities as. But they brought it to me. They are the ones who sue me. Maybe my entire life I've only sued government or anybody twice. But I've been sued. Probably around like 11 cases in Abuja alone, both criminal and civil against me. And I'm sure more will come. But, it's the nature of the work.
Let's look at Africa Action Congress.
Yes.
In the calculations and rating of all the parties that are going to be on the ballot.
Yes.
AAC probably will come within the shuffle of those that are not in contention.
It's not true. It's not true. In fact, if you go now,
we talk about structures in Nigeria. We talk.
We've had that conversation about structure before. Transactional structures are not structures. Non-ideological structures are not structures. If you are a political party, and your members can go to bed as APC, and the next morning they can wake up as PDP. You are not a structured party. You understand? It is like big deal in the US for somebody to jump from being a Democrat to
do that like
Republican.
Yeah.
You understand? But here, there are people, if you search their clothes, what they are wearing, their underwear is PDP. The Babariga is APC. the cufflinks will be SDP. At the slightest provocation, they're out. So you can't call those kind of structure. And we've always said, and now more people are accepting that in any country, any nation, the structure of any political party movement are the people. Because if they don't support you, you are. If they support you, they form your structures, they defend you, your ideas, your ideology, and their own personal convictions in the name of that party, in the name of that movement. So, and everybody is now accepting that postulation that we brought out in 2018, 2019. I was going to answer your question about being in contention. What is in contention this time around is what the Nigerian people are yearning and aspiring for. They are sick, and I mean tired of the two big legacy parties. They are looking for a way out of the quagmire in which they have found themselves. And they have been looking for us, and they have found us. I will not tell you that we are the only new political party, or fairly new political party, that is acceptable to, that they are looking at. But of all the 18 political parties you have today, AAC is the youngest, most recognized political party. AAC was founded in August of 2018. It's not even 4 years yet. And we are running as one of the only 16 political parties that presented a presidential candidate. And guess where we are coming from? We're coming from 3 years of hijack, in which the government put impostors in the party since 2019. We just recovered the party back through the Court of Appeal on June 3rd. And we are running a few days later several offices in the land. We are coming from a background of members and leaders of the political party having gone to jail in the last 4 years, spending time in jail, having been shot at, brutalized, tortured, and we are here standing in front of you participating in an election that's taking place in 2020. We have done the impossible. And anybody talking in this country today about presidential candidates, if they mention 1, 2, 3 in some markets, you find AAC there. You hear my name. In some markets, if you mention 1, 2, they'll mention my name. Maybe in some extreme situations, we appear number 5. And there are 18 political parties and 16 presidential candidates. I think so. You should give us seat. Absolutely. And we haven't even started campaigning yet, because that's where the fire is. That would burn all of them. They're about to feel the burn. We haven't started. Campaigning starts September 18.
Yes, that about. So yes. This is not a campaign platform.
No,
we're looking at Nigeria.
We are still in rehearsals. And taking in their boots.
Well, a quick one.
Yes.
A passing shot.
Yes.
What do you want to see happen between now in terms of disengagement of the electioneering process?
Yes.
For 2023.
One of the things I like to see before campaign starts is for the media to rise up to its duties in society and engage not third parties. It's almost a crime committed by the media against Nigerian people to keep talking to their third parties of candidates. The candidates that get the most airtime within Nigerian media today are candidates who will never grant an interview. They will talk about them in the morning, in the afternoon, and they will never come for an interview. I'd like to see sitting next to you Alhaji Atiku Abubakar. You grill him the way I am. You are grilling me for almost an hour now. See if you can complete the interview. I'd like to see Tinubu come here and he will not fall off this chair after you ask 2 questions. But most likely, you're talking most about them. But those of us who are out with brilliant ideas, who are busting with ideas on how to fix this country, we don't even get their time. In 2019, they wouldn't even allow me to participate in debate because they said I was uncontrollable.
Well, I have been engaged in this conversation with Mr. Sowore Omoyele, right?
Omoyele, yes.
Omoyele. He is of the
African Action Congress.
African Action Congress. We've been looking at the ideological component of the Nigerian democracy. How up is it, or how low is it, and the extent to which we can drive governance on the basis of principle, logical engagement,
democracy in practice,
so that this nation can work on.
Thank you so much for bringing me.